If you're standing in front of a rack of pottery wheels wondering whether the Brent EX is the sweet spot between a hobby starter and a serious studio tool, the real question is, who will actually get value out of this little yellow machine, who can safely walk away, and does the price make sense for someone who just wants to throw a few mugs a week? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks talking to a few local art teachers, reading forums where beginners share their first wheel woes, and even watching a couple of live streams where creators set up their Brent wheels in cramped apartments. The hesitation most newbies feel is simple. They don't want a wheel that rattles, spills glaze everywhere, or forces them to upgrade after a month because it can't handle a slightly bigger piece. That's the lens I'm using today. First, let's picture the typical setup. The Brent EX is a compact, standalone wheel that fits on a standard desk or a small workbench. Its footprint is roughly the size of a large pizza box, and the height is low enough that you can sit on a regular kitchen stool without feeling cramped. For a teenager just discovering the joy of centering clay, or for a grown-up who lives in a one-bedroom apartment, that size is a genuine advantage. The included splash pan is a modestly sized metal tray that catches water and glaze runoff, meaning you won't have to lay down a tarp every time you wipe the wheel clean. In my conversations with community college pottery instructors, they praise the splash pan because it cuts down on cleanup time after a class of 20 students, and that's a real day-to-day benefit you won't find on the spec sheet. Now, who should consider buying this wheel? If you're a beginner who plans to work mostly with hand building, pinch pots, and small wheel-thrown items like cups, bowls under 8 inches in diameter, the Brent EX hits the sweet spot. Its classic controller, a single-hand knob that feels more like a vintage radio dial than a modern digital touch, gives you tactile feedback that many digital wheels lack. You can feel the wheel slow down as you turn the knob, which helps when you're learning to control speed for pulling up the walls of a mug. The reversing switch is another practical perk. After centering a lump of clay, you can flip the direction to pull the piece out without having to manually stop and restart the motor. For hobbyists who make a few pieces a week, that convenience translates into a smoother workflow and fewer oops moments. On the flip side, if you're already comfortable with larger-scale work, think full-size dinner plates, sculptural vessels, or throwing in stoneware that needs higher torque, you'll likely feel the limits of the EX quickly. The motor is sized for the wheel's small mass, which means it can struggle with heavy, wet clay, or when you try to keep a wide slab spinning for an extended period. In a few of the studio forums I visited, users with a background in ceramics mentioned that they needed to add extra weight under the base to keep the wheel from wobbling during longer throws. That extra step defeats part of the plug-and-play promise of the Brent EX. Another practical strength is the 10-year warranty. In a market where many entry-level wheels only come with a 1-year guarantee, a decade of coverage signals that the manufacturer expects the wheel to hold up under regular use. For a family that might pass the wheel from a teen to a younger sibling, that warranty can be a real peace-of-mind factor. And the 70 milliliters of free glaze that comes in the box is a modest but thoughtful add-on. It's enough to test a couple of glaze recipes without having to run to the art supply store, which is a nice little nudge toward experimenting rather than just replicating what you see online. But there are hidden trade-offs worth flagging before you click Add to Cart. The wheel's plastic foot pedal, while functional, can feel a bit flimsy after a few months of heavy foot tapping. Some users have reported that the pedal's resistance changes over time, requiring you to press a little harder to achieve the same speed control. That might not matter if you're only throwing a few pieces a week, but for a serious practitioner, inconsistent pedal feel can become a subtle source of frustration. Additionally, the speed range, while adequate for small items, tops out lower than you'd find on a mid-range 1-horsepower wheel.